Hi. If you're here, it's probably because one of your top SMA connectors has broken, or you think it might be broken. The way you would know that is if you looked in your goggles and you saw that one of your signal levels is always low on one of these two antennas. So I'm going to walk you through how I opened it, the goggle, accessed the board, and repaired the SMA connector on my goggles following some rough instructions from Carl. So following Ryan's video, the first thing I did was open the goggles. To do that, you can watch his video, or you can watch mine, I guess. So the easiest thing I find is to take the bottom off first, because there's only two clips on the bottom, and then the top center one. Okay. So move that out of the way. So there's really three clips on the top, but when we release the bottom two, it's going to release the top side ones. Then with everything removed, taking out the SD card, removed any connectors from the bottom, removed any connectors to my SMAs, we can unscrew the goggles. There's three screws. There's one there in the middle, one on the bottom left, one on the bottom right. Now, to open it, Ryan used the pry tool. That's a good idea. I have pretty good strong fingernails, so I use those. You want to watch out. There is ribbon connectors to the displays in here that kind of wrap around from the display to the bottom. So when we open it, we want to open it kind of like that. So you can kind of pull out the sides, and then we have the gap. And what I did is just ran my fingernail around in there. And the first time you do it, you might have to work a little harder, but you can see there's, if you need to press them in, there's one clip, two clips, three clips. The first time I did it, it took a little bit more effort. But there you go. And then you should be able to kind of lay it very gently flat. You want to be really gentle with these ribbon cables. The next thing to do is I take a small screwdriver, so that anything really small, and on the side that I want to repair or inspect, I need to remove this this part, the cup around the SMA connector. I think the easiest way to do that is you push in from the top. It's still going to be stuck, and so there is another clip on the bottom, and I kind of worked around in there and lifted that up with my screwdriver, and that let me pull it out. So now the cup's out. The next thing is we need to loosen but not remove yet the nut around the SMA connector. So I'm just going to loosen it, and you'll see why in a minute. I'll mention why. But, all right. So going on the bottom, I'm going to do a couple things. I'm going to remove the connector for the fan. Just unplug that. It's a really tiny little connector. Get that out of there, and then the fan, you can just gently pull up and it pulls right out. So there's a lock washer around the that top SMA connector, and it's going to be a pain to remove. It was for me, so I don't want to struggle with that and be removing this connector board at the same time. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go in there and I'm just going to pry this sort of open like that. There's a little plug in there. So I just unplugged that plug, and so now this board's loose. I can't quite take it out. I did try, but this connector board is still in the way. I need to be able to push that back a little bit to get it out. So I'm going to remove the connector board, and that you can kind of just wiggle it loose. Okay, there's 3 connectors on it, 1, 2, 3, and set that aside. So now we can focus on getting the board the rest of the way out. So it might, I am being really careful while I do this to try and always support as much as possible the side with the display. So I'm not gonna tear those cables. You could probably remove them. I didn't want to deal with that, and it seemed fine. So there's 3 parts here. There's the nut. There is a washer, sort of a sort of spring washer. Here, just turn it upside down. Get that out. And there's this, if I can get it in focus, this lock washer. And that sucker is a real pain to get out there the first time. What I did is, now that I have everything loose, I can just press on the end of this SMA connector to kind of work it out. So I'm trying to be gentle. You can also, when you get to a point, you can try spinning it. It's just that it gets caught on these threads. I think the fact that that is conically shaped kind of encourages it to get extra sort of jammed on there. I don't know. But you can kind of almost unscrew it. This was the most difficult part of the whole process for me, was getting that out. And you want to make sure you don't dork that, oh shoot. Okay. Well, I mean, you can see here why it's a pain. You can almost pull that through. I don't really want to, but here we go. I think we got it enough. We can kind of unscrew it off. I don't know if there's a better way to do this. I don't like this washer. I might recommend that they do something so that this washer has something nice and flat to sit up against if they do a revision to the goggles. Okay, so we have this washer. It's a little bit dorked up, but it's fine. All right. So now this board comes out. And this one I've already repaired. How did I know I needed to repair it? On mine, I'm going to bring you down here. All right. So on mine, I could visually see that the trace was lifted. The other thing you can do is you can get out a multimeter and you can check the impedance. So I have my multimeter in beep mode right now. So if I touch these together, it's going to beep. Okay. Here, I'll move that closer so you can hear the beep maybe better. All right. All right. So I'm just going to go down in there. And if I touch that centerpiece and there's a little pad right there, the one that I've bridged my joint to, and if everything's working correctly, it should beep like that. So there should be a trace under there, and if it's fine, it should be connected. So I did notice on mine, or I wasn't sure about it. It looked like maybe the ground connectors were maybe a little bent. I didn't mess with those because it seemed okay. It seems pretty sturdy still. So I left that alone. And I just focused on repairing that joint. There's a couple options. I talked with Here Comes Whitey on the HDZero Discord. He recommended if you have a burnt out motor, using the magnet wire. So you can take some of the magnet wire from a motor. And that's great for this kind of work where you need a really fine piece of wire. You can also use a little clip from a resistor or a capacitor, which is what I used. I don't keep a very clean desk, so I just had a little bit lying on my desk. And that was convenient. I used that. I think the magnet wire is also probably a good idea. All right. So now, to do that solder work, what you'll want to do, I think, is you'll need some good solder. If you don't normally work with solder, you should practice first. I don't recommend this if you don't, but this is the solder I used. I like that it comes in a tube. I like the thickness for most of the work I do. It's good. It's fine. It's shiny. Makes shiny joints. And then this is the flux paste I use. I've used some of those flux pens, and I don't like them because I can't see. I just don't like them because I can't see whether I've got the flux on there because it's really clear, and I don't like that it's hard to tell if like the tip's dry or if the pen's dry, or the tip gets messed up. So I just have this little tin, and I have some pins, and I'll just take a pin and I'll get the amount of flux on it that I want, and I'll dab that right where I need it on the part. Okay, so here I would just put a tiny bit on the little wire, and then I can use tweezers to position the wire where I need to. And for this, it's so small, I don't actually, I did pre-tin this with just a tiny bit, the little wire I pre-tin with just a tiny bit of solder on either end. But if I put this in there, I'd get a giant blob of solder. I didn't do that. I just put a tiny little drop, like maybe that much, on the tip of the iron, so the iron's wet, has a little bit of solder, so it's a really clean tip. And hold the wire in place. With my tweezers, and just touch the bit of the SMA, the center pole that has a little bit of solder on it, and get the wire down in there. And once I did that, then I pushed the little wire around to get it in the right spot, so I could then tack it in place to that connector. And that connector, you see, there's two of them there. There's one on the right and one on the left. And Carl said the one on the left is the one we want to solder to. We want to bridge to. Okay? Afterwards, you can test it by you can probe between this resistor right here, that end of that little resistor right there, and the center pole. And you should have continuity, and it should be clear right here. You shouldn't have any bridging between those two connections. Okay? While you have it open, if you want to check this one, here you can put a probe in that center hole, and right down here, I don't know if you can see the traces, but it's one of these 2 points you probe, and that should be connected to that center pole. But the side connector, it's a much more robust connector type, I think, because this can't get pulled out. You know, you can't really pull that through, and if you push on the connector, you're just going to push into the board. So you'd have to do some serious chicanery if you're going to try and rip that off of there. I don't know how you do that without just breaking the board. All right. So now you want to put everything back together. That's not too bad. I'm going to zoom you back out here if I can. All right. First thing I do, slide this board in place. Actually, that's not the first thing I should do. First thing I should do is put my connector board back in place. I take that back. I was right the first time. Slide that board, the SMA board in place. Then I call the connector board. Really, they have a lot more stuff on them. It's kind of cool. So you got your Divimath, one of your Divimath chips, your DM 6302 on that board, and this board has your other Divimath chip, your DM 5680, HDZero. All right, so that's kind of all our magic. Not all the magic, some of the magic on there. And yeah. And then kind of press it in from both sides. Make sure everything's fully seated. And then we can reach in, we can push in our SMA connector board. So now that's fully seated. Okay. It doesn't matter, we can put this in now. All right. And we can put our lock washer, ooh, wrong one. We can put our pain in the butt lock washer on now. It's easiest if you sort of straighten it out a little bit first. It's really hard to get it off without dorking it up. And it's really hard to get it on if it's bent. All right. Kind of get that on. And kind of twist that on there. Maybe somebody has a trick. This is what I had to do. If you have a better way, let me know. You can say in the comments. That's what they all say. Whoop! Try not upsetting my camera. Sorry, I'm not Ian. I don't have a really, really nice camera stand. Maybe he'll do a video. I asked him to. He said he didn't have a... We might have to wait till he needs to do a repair. I don't know, maybe he'll do one sooner. I like his videos. Alright. So I got that most of the way on there. Kind of manhandle it the rest of the way, I think. Once I get this nut on there, let's give it a good twist. You don't really want to crank on that if you can avoid it. Because this is... wait. If you crank on the SMA connector, you're basically cranking on those solder joints to that board. I would say that's not the best thing for it. But kind of have to do what you got to do. I don't know, maybe if I give it a little push there, I can kind of get it to seat a little further down. And as I'm doing this, here, so as I'm doing this, I got my fingers under here, so I'm supporting this board. So I'm trying really hard not to have the force I'm putting on this connector transfer to anything else. All right, just get that down there. I think we got it. That felt good. Twisting. All right. And you don't want to over tighten this. I'm just turning this until, like if you push on a spring, you can kind of feel that like the force on the spring increases as you press harder, right? But when you're dragging something, the force is constant. And that's why I'm feeling in this screw as I'm doing it. If the force is constant, then I'm just fighting drag I think. But when I feel that the force is starting to ramp up, that means I'm at that point where I'm starting to cause the material to deform like a spring. And I don't want to do that. I just want it to be snug enough that it's not going to come undone. Alright. I meant to say this earlier, but when you're doing this the first time, it might be easier for you to handle without the straps. The straps slide out really easily. Sorry, I should have said that at the beginning. Alright. So, we're almost there. First time I did this, I almost forgot to put the fans back in. Don't forget to put the fan back in. You don't want to. It just slides in. Okay. Apparently, I guess I damaged the rubber a tiny bit. I think it's fine. All right. And then just push this down in there really gently. I'm using metal tweezers. I am being really careful not to scratch up the board. If you're worried about scratching up the board, you might want to use plastic tweezers. All right. The last step is to fold the goggles over. And right now is a great time to plug it in and make sure it actually works. So grab the power cable, plug it in, plug the battery in, turn them on, and pray. Okay. And do I see video in both? I see video in both eyepieces. I don't know how well you can see that. Maybe if I turn my light off. Okay, so video there. I can see there's video in there. So I think we're good. I can hear the fans are both running. So that's good. So then put all your antennas back on, and what I did to test it is I turned on a quad, got my quad, turned it on, put it on 25 milliwatts, put it upside down at the farthest point of my house, went to the other side of my house, got up my and we'll turn on the goggles, went to the other end of the house, so the signal's low, and verified that if I took the antenna off, I could see the signal drop. If I put the antenna on, the signal went back. All the signals looked similar in strength. That was good enough for me, and then I'll test fly and see that everything looks good. All right. Then you can press everything back together. screwdriver tip off the table, I think. A different one. That'll work. So these are going to plastic. You want to just be careful that you don't strip out the plastic. The way I do that is I turn it backwards until I feel it click, and then I can turn it forwards. I'm just turning it until I start to feel that spring force. And as soon as I feel some of that spring force, that's enough. And the middle one. Okay. Faceplate. All right. Get the faceplate on. What worked best for me was to line up, get these kind of started to slide in. Get the outer ones first. I found that if I got the inner one done first, then it would kind of pull the faceplate a little bit like that, and I couldn't easily get it around the outside ridge. Right there. If I did the inside first. So I do the outside clips first. Get both of them on both sides. Top and bottom. Here. There we go. There's one. There's the other. Get the middle one. You probably got a bunch of oil on your lenses. I keep my goggles really clean, so my goggle bag inside is really clean. I just wipe it with the inside of the bag. That's what I do. You can do what you want to do. Seems like it works well for me. Alright. Now you should have a good set of goggles again. There you go. Alright. Thank you. Or, well, you're welcome. Later.